Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag. From the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
John, we're back.
We're back.
We took a hiatus for a while. Part of it I want to explain because I knew we were going to take at least a week off because just the dead period and kind of had some other things to take care of and that kind of thing. And so we had talked about that, but what happened was my stepfather died on Father's Day, and so I ended up having to be out of town for a lot longer period of time. And then, of course, that basically took up 2 weeks, and then last week was the July 4th. So we ended up with 3 weeks off. And I hate that we ended up with so much of a gap in time, but it kind of works out. We're back on the same day that everybody else is.
There you go. Dead period's over, and so we were opening a brand new high school season.
Yeah, we're doing what people a lot of times do in the podcasting world, or I guess even maybe in the radio world, but you don't notice it so much in the radio world. But in the podcasting world, they'll do these seasons. And they'll say, we're at the finale of the season.
So this is season
6.
Season 6.
Yeah, amazingly enough. It's my 5th year at Commonwealth Broadcasting, but I guess I refer to it as season 6 because we, at the Daily Times, Scott Wilson and I had been doing one for some time before, maybe even more than a year before that. So I guess this is our 5th season coming up. And 6th season we've been doing this kind of.
It hadn't been kicked off yet.
No, they're
what an accomplishment.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, this day and age, it really is. But let's mention the fact dead period's over. Technically, I guess it was over with Saturday at 12:01 a.m.
The 10th, that's right.
Yeah, and some people around the state decided to go out and do midnight madness-ish stuff, like 2 a.m. madness, which is madness in my opinion. But most everybody we know, they're getting kicked off today, or kicked off today with practices in the morning or in the afternoon. So, I think it's going to be interesting because there are no restrictions. We don't have anything we have to talk about. I would say our mantra last year was "Be kind." It's probably still a good mantra.
Yeah, it's never a bad deal.
Yeah,
be kind to people.
Yeah, don't yell at people. Just you don't like their coaching decision or their officiating decision. I mean, there's no point in acting that way. Hopefully, people will someday rein that nonsense in. I would say that's the only thing that really holds over from last year that we talked about.
That's right.
But otherwise, just as a reminder, it's been a little while since we've just been able to enjoy the sports. And I guess as a reminder, what are some of the things we can look forward to as the dead period comes to a close here? Let's start with football, because there are restrictions in terms of when you can put on pads and that kind of stuff. I think they start out with helmets and shorts.
Yeah, those are the normal restrictions of every year. Yeah. In terms of how many practices you can get in before you can go full contact, and when tackling's allowed and all that other stuff. But yeah, everything's sort of back to normal, to be perfectly honest with you. So the first week or two of football is kind of conditioning again and things of that nature. Getting adjusted to the heat is a big deal, but really, looking back a year from now, a year ago, I mean, you could only work with like 10 people or less, and you had to stay with your same pod and group. And
you had one football that 10 could play with or something of that nature.
Had to clean it every time somebody else touched it. I mean, it was just incredible. And there was, this time last year, severe doubt if you'd have a football season. So all that stuff is, now COVID's not over with, but it looks like, the restrictions are for the most part. There'll probably be a hiccup here or there, but, I just look forward to having a relatively normal year. I think it's fun. I know the kids are.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be nice to spend a show talking about the sports.
Right.
Versus the things around the sports.
That's exactly right.
Which we'll get to some things around the sports in our second segment here, but that will impact college sports, and seem to be that people are misunderstanding some things as it relates to high school as well. But anyway, I guess I'm looking forward to that as well. I mean, I've been out shooting some photos. You can find them on 104thescore.com. I feel more free to do more video stuff this year because last year, to be honest, I was concerned that if I went and shot some videos, the police out there would respond to them, out of context and that kind of stuff about what people were doing during practice. because nuance is lost in the age of social media. So I was concerned about that. So I plan on shooting more videos this year, hopefully talking to more people with videos, players especially, not just coaches and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to the liberty of those things as well, John.
Well, your best, I've always said the best videos that you've had online for the last year or so, I think, are the players.
Yeah, some of them have been fantastic.
Fantastic interviews.
Yeah. I know I always hated talking to the players for writing a story. And it wasn't because I didn't like talking to the players, but it's hard to catch their personality as teenagers in the context of writing a story. But you could get to see their personality shine in these videos and that kind of stuff. Especially those, some of them, they're used to doing video, but they're probably not used to being interviewed. They're used to kind of controlling that aspect, and so their responses a lot of times are very entertaining and a lot of fun, and a lot of them are so much brighter than people give them credit for.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I look forward to that kind of stuff. And then there are also some coaching changes that have come under that are on
just happened this summer.
Yeah, that just happened this summer in the fall sports, especially the Berrien County girls soccer team, which did so well last year under Lawrence Niken. Lee McFarland is back as the girls soccer coach at Berrien.
Yeah, this would be Lee's second go around.
Yeah,
and Lee was I think Lee was like our second soccer coach,
right?
Of all that we had, and he's Lee played soccer in high school, and he's coached the girls and boys.
Mm-hmm.
And Coach Niken, as you said, just did a fantastic job. Step down, and so Lee will inherit a really good team.
Well, and Lawrence's tenure as soccer coach was actually not supposed to happen.
Right.
Amanda Lockhart was supposed to be the coach, but I think they had some things that they had to take care of, and so Lawrence was going to be assistant, and he ended up in that circumstance. You might know a little more about.
Right.
That was a couple of years ago. He ended up doing it for 2 years. He had never really planned to coach the team, so he kind of did what you've done several times through your time at Berrien County, filled in the gap as a need.
And fantastic. He's just a fantastic coach, and Lee will do a good job. But he's got good players back, and the girls soccer always goes through Bowling Green, but I think Berrien jumped up there and was very competitive last year with those really good Bowling Green teams. And also Greenwood, I think 1-0 in the region.
Yeah, they had an opportunity to score and didn't get it, and Greenwood got basically a lucky shot in.
Yeah.
And so, that was a devastating loss for them, but that's just how far they've come as a program.
That is correct.
I mean, Greenwood, what were they, the defending state champions, I think they were?
And won the region again.
Yeah, won the region again.
Got to the state semifinals.
Yeah, so, I mean, just a powerhouse program. So there's that change. People will be familiar with Lee. So
Blake Crabtree stepped aside as a baseball coach at Berrien. Another, that's two really good coaches that we lost, because I thought Blake was arguably, you could have easily voted for him as coach of the year last year in baseball. The job that he and Scott Gillen did was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, because we talked about this all through the baseball season. The expectations for the program were not real high, because the year that they missed was a year where they had a truckload of good players,
pitchers in particular.
Yes, they were going to be back, and I think 3 of the 4 of them were seniors.
Right.
And so they kind of brought back a team. They had some guys who had some experience, but they had a bunch of guys who didn't really have a lot of experience.
And that job is still has not been filled yet.
Okay. And, there's another one. Somebody's going to be taking over a program that obviously has been built up and headed in the right direction. In some ways, they get the unfortunate situation of just don't screw it up, more or less.
A lot of good players back.
Yeah, a lot of good players back. So, and then over at Glasgow, change in athletic director. Bailey Garman, she was Bailey Alexander, Matt Alexander's daughter.
Mm-hmm. People
will remember her playing softball at Glasgow. She spent the past year, I think, or 2 years maybe, at Gaverna as an assistant softball coach. And I think she was also coaching cross country over there. Craig Cassidy stepped aside. He's still at Glasgow. He hasn't gone anywhere. But he stepped aside as athletic director. I imagine the past year just took a toll. And I'm be honest, I talked about this back in the spring before we went on our hiatus. I really thought we might see a lot of people give up these positions.
Yeah, the AD position is hard in general with the number of, especially the explosion number of athletes and and sports. But last year in particular, with trying to run a COVID event was, it was just amazing how difficult that was. So Glasgow will miss Craig. I mean, he did a really good job, but
he was a 24/7 AD.
He will, and he'll help Bailey, and Bailey is more than qualified, but that's a tough job. Mm-hmm. It's the AD today is not like the AD in high school 30 years ago. It's totally different.
Yeah, it's sort of like the idea of being a transportation director for a school district. Used to you just had to make sure the buses ran on time.
No,
that's not the way the world is anymore.
With Title IX and contracts and all the stuff that you have to do, game management, it's really a full-time job. And a lot of schools have made the AD a full-time job.
Yeah.
There are others that have not. But I don't know how you don't have it as a full-time job.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, another situation really, Craig has done a fantastic job as the athletic director at Glasgow. Bailey does get to step into a situation where things should be all the P's and
organized.
Q's
It's
and
organized
and taken care of, the I's and T's crossed and dotted and all that kind of jazz. So she shouldn't have to do a whole lot in terms of like getting things organized. But it'll be interesting. It'll be a baptism by fire getting started right off with fall sports.
Fall sports is busy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we mentioned the football already. You're talking cross country, golf, soccer, volleyball,
football.
These things all going on. All the players that you got to make sure are meeting the requirements. That's not the athletic director's job.
Well, you have more. The fall is the most. You have more athletes participate in the fall than any other sport. Now, part of that's driven by volleyball and volleyball and football. Football, you tend to have more players in that one than any other one.
Yeah.
And volleyball's rosters are pretty big too. So that means there's a lot of physicals to keep up with and so forth. So it's a busy time.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting. Good luck to Bailey. One of the things I want to mention right off. The idea is we're going to try to set up all of our interviews, get our coaches in here for all the different sports, the ones that want to come. I'll be getting the emails out this week.
You can't make them come.
I cannot make them come.
But we do encourage people to. It's great. It's great publicity, not just for your team, but your athletes in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I think you as a coach through the years, you one of the things I think you saw your role as was to promote your players.
And promote the sport, too.
Very
important in girls' sports.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's an opportunity for them to come in here and do those things, talk about their teams, because it's just not something here locally for us. Outside this show and 104thescore.com, there's a big opportunity for. The school districts do a part. Each program has their social media, but I think there's a broader audience sometimes. So those are the things going on there. And really, in 2 weeks, talking about the fall sports, the high school golf season really gets started in 2 weeks.
Yeah, they're first, and which is a natural thing because if you play high school golf, you've probably been playing since the spring anyway.
Yeah.
So that's the first sport. I also have the first tournament too. The regional tournament comes first with them.
Yeah, and so I don't know if any of ours are getting started on the 26th, or I think most of them are playing probably on that Friday or Saturday. A lot of times what happens early in the season, and it's pretty awesome, that's when your bigger tournaments are going on. So if you've got a team that you think is going to be pretty sharp, you'll see them playing either the tournaments they host, and I know Barron and Glasgow both host tournaments.
Well, you can it's really beneficial to play these big tournaments before school starts.
Yes.
For travel purposes, and you play 18 holes. When you're limited to when school starts, you're only going to get 9 in.
Yeah.
Unless you play that weekend.
Yeah. And then some programs, I mean, they know they're not going to those weekend tournaments. They're playing those weekday matches and that kind of stuff, dual matches or try matches and that kind of thing. But, early part of the season, lots of tournaments going on, so we should have a lot of action there. I think, we had some critical players graduate, especially in girls golf last year from Barron and Glasgow. But they also both had some good young players coming up. Off the top of my head for Glasgow, of course, I think about Nina McMurtry, who had a good summer last summer. She's played well this summer as well. So, that's one of the ones I think a lot of people will probably be looking at how she performs this year. And, of course, got Landry Steenbergen and some others over at Barron that are coming up. And Kinsey, I suddenly forgot her last, Edwards, who played pretty well last year as the season progressed, young player. So, should be some good golf there. Over at Barron, Jamison Corbin, I think has done pretty well this summer and had a good year last year. Young guys. So, the golf season should be pretty exciting for us around here.
Yep, and it's like I said, it's they've been playing most of the summer anyway, but officially, it's a little bit different playing by yourself or playing whatever on these summer tours. Mm-hmm. But it takes on a little bit different, I think, excitement when you play for your school and your team.
Yeah. Well, and I think you can always see that you don't think of golf as a team sport, but when you see them all out there together with their teammates, that's where you get to see it.
Wearing the same colors and all this stuff. I think it's pretty neat.
And the camaraderie, they seem, they always, it's kind of like a family get together a lot of times on the golf course. So that's good. I imagine, going back to the soccer thing, I think we should probably have 4 pretty good soccer teams this year. Now, as you mentioned earlier, girls and boys, everything goes to Bowling Green. Some of the best teams in the state are in that 14th district over there. So it's always a chore, but we've had some good teams come through here. They've been playing pretty well of late.
And we didn't mention the football change.
No.
Tommy Muse.
That is correct. Probably the biggest one. It was kind of an odd situation, but I'm glad Tommy's the guy taking the reins.
Tommy's put in his time, been defensive coordinator for years, and the players are very, very comfortable with him. Yeah. And with the sudden, with Coach Arnett leaving, and then the other situation, I think Tommy is kind of the glue that for the players. And when he took over at the end of the summer, I think everything went smooth. Mm-hmm. And of course now it starts for real right now, but Barron will be going through that as well. Glasgow should be really good. They got most of their players back.
Yeah,
and I think Glasgow always has high expectations, but I think they're legitimate this year.
Yeah, they lost some skill players they'll miss, guys like Jamari Mack and that kind of thing, but they have Hunter Scott back. He's going to have probably a huge impact on both sides of the ball. John Carter Myers hopefully doesn't get hurt this year. That was one of their things last year. They ended up battling some injuries, but they performed well. But yeah, he'll be back. And the upside for them is, Myers is a fantastic defensive player, and with Easton Jesse, who was a freshman last year, getting that time at quarterback,
stepped in, did well.
That the door opens them up in terms of what they can probably do this coming year.
Yeah, and it's and they had a very successful. Was it last year that they changed their offense in the middle of the year?
Yeah. They went to that wing tee.
And boy, that seemed to be a big spark to them.
Yeah, got Kieran Stockton in there playing the fullback position, and it was a huge deal for them. It changed. I think they were a good team.
Coaching moves are overrated. That was not. That was a huge move.
Well, and the irony is, it was a kind of a move out of necessity with Myers getting hurt.
But sometimes people don't do that.
Yeah, it's kind of like you talked about before when we were talking about, I think it was the quarterback at Kentucky when he got hurt, and sometimes you were playing the wrong guy by accident, and then you end up playing the right guy.
Yep.
I'm not saying Easton Jesse was the wrong guy or the right guy, but the change that was predicated turned out to be the right change.
Yeah, the change in offense fit them to a T.
Yeah. So that'll be fascinating to see, if they stick with that. I don't know why they wouldn't. But we'll have Coach Garman in here, and we'll get Coach Muse in here, and we'll talk to them and ask them what they're looking forward to. Anything else you can think of about this upcoming fall sports season?
No, it's just like I mentioned earlier. Last year was at this time was so much uncertainty in the air, and it just seems like now we're in such a better place in terms of the COVID and just back to normal. It just seems so much back to normal, which is great for everybody, but in particular for the high school players.
Yeah, it is. I do think a lot of people figured out last year the things that they enjoy in life that they probably were just overlooking before.
Yes.
Some people would call them the simple things. They're just kind of sometimes they are the routine things, and sometimes routine is great if you just pay close enough attention.
That's exactly right.
All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, at least for my family, the College World Series was a fantastic, fantastic circumstance. I may have mentioned before that basically my wife's whole family went to Mississippi State. And so there's a funny thing that kind of happened. So they end up beating Vandy 2-1 in the championship round of the College World Series.
First national title in any sport.
That is right, and which
from
is
Mississippi State,
which is a little bit surprising for Mississippi State on the baseball side. Because they've had a program that's been there many times over the last 30, 35 years. and been close. I think they've even been in a championship game twice before, or championship round. The format's changed, so it's kind of a little bit odd. But they've been right there before and not been able to get it done. So the fact that they did get it done, that they beat Vandy, which is the defending champion, 2-1. They beat them. They lost the first game 8-2. Then they beat them 13-2, and I think 9-0 in the third game. And the funny little story is this. So I had to be down in Mississippi for part of that time, and so I watched most of the College World Series with my stepsister. She's a big baseball fan, and so we'd make my mom watch the games because she doesn't watch sports, and until she would finally get mad at us and tell us I'm changing the channels. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we got back. I got back, and the championship game was on Wednesday night. Yeah, Wednesday night, and so my wife. I told her, I said, we're going to go watch this game. We're going to go somewhere and watch this game. She goes, I can't watch it. She goes, if I watch it, they'll lose. So, now here's the thing. Her dad was a huge Mississippi State baseball fan. Went to Mississippi State and all this kind of stuff. Would watch all the games, go to games, that kind of thing. And so for her, it was kind of emotional. Her dad died when she was 16 and, never got a chance to see him do this. So for her, it was kind of emotional to actually sit there and watch the game, even though at the same time she was completely panicked about the idea of watching it. Yeah. And so when they won, I said, see, I told you I was right. I told you they were going to win. I didn't actually think they were going to win. I figured Vandy would win the World Series. But I did enjoy. Over the time of watching it and going back to the softball College World Series, I just enjoyed the nature of those tournaments and of those sports in college, and I think it's because the people who are there playing predominantly are sticking around, and they're playing a number of years, and they're becoming synonymous with their programs.
Well, they're also the college kids in baseball and softball have not been what I could say pampered as much as some of the other perhaps sports.
Yeah.
It seems more fun and real to me when I watch the baseball and softball as opposed to some other sports. Mm-hmm. And it's I don't know. It just appears to be more genuine, and genuine emotion, genuine fun, and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
Will that change now that with that now they can make money on their image and name? Who knows? I don't know. But. Yeah, I mean, I like the college softball better because the games are quicker and so forth. It's hard for me to say that since I played college baseball, but it's just true. Mississippi State I know is important to you and your family. I understand that. And I was surprised that was their first national title. The women in basketball got close. They got beat in the finals. I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But baseball at Mississippi State is probably their number one sport. That or football. It's close, probably.
Well, I mean, look, it is baseball, even though they've pumped more money into football to basically fail at it predominantly through the decades. I mean,
baseball is actually it's a revenue sport for Mississippi State. They make money, right?
Yes, yep. I mean because they built a whole new stadium that seats 45,000, something like that. It's one of the largest college baseball stadiums in America. They named it after Ron Polk, obviously. Uh-huh. They did that about 4 or 5 years ago, and so they've taken it serious because it is a serious sport for them. But if you were to talk about just generally putting money into sport, football's a thing that they've always wanted to be successful at. But as long as you're on the same side of the conference as Alabama, most of the time you're just taking a beating. Alabama, Auburn. Those guys have basically just beaten them through the years, and they have not been successful. LSU's in that same side. So they've wanted to be good at football, but baseball is their sport. So, I mean, that's the way that goes. Now, on that, image and likeness thing, here's what I think.
Why don't you explain that real quick?
So, basically, I guess, was it the Supreme Court ruling last month that basically said you can't. How can you call these people not employees when you basically treat them like employees? They
basically said you cannot deny athletes, college athletes, the right basically to make money. That's pretty much what they kind of said.
Yeah, and it was like was it unanimous or 7-2? I think it was unanimous, wasn't it?
I believe that's right.
Yeah,
and now you can't. as of right now, I don't think there's any states. There's really no NCAA legislation because it's the NCAA. They're helpless. But I don't think there's a state that's going to allow – you can't pay a player to play. Yeah. That's as far as I know, no state is allowing that to happen. But, you know, you are allowed in college to sell a jersey with your name on it. You are allowed to get a
endorse products.
You can endorse products. You can get paid for your autograph. You can be paid by a business for so many appearances. Mm-hmm. So there's a way that athletes now can make money off their name and image, and it started on July 1st, and by 12:01, all kinds of deals were being made.
It was sort of like NBA free agency or whatever. Everybody signed 1 minute after midnight. And you're like, oh, you like they weren't talking about this.
And
already?
It's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out. You know, right now it's like the wild, wild west.
Mm. You know, here's the thing about it. I think on a common sense idea, if you look at it this way, if you are on a full scholarship in theater at a university, there's nothing that prevents you from also working professionally.
True.
All right. The restriction, so that's true across the board for college students, whatever, any other venue that they participate in other than college athletics. And the idea through the years has been you don't want schools to build up, basically, to be so dominant just because they have the money to just pay people to come to their school. But on the flip side of that, through the years, universities have just found ways around that they shield themselves from the prosecution of the NCAA, as we've seen in several cases, especially in recent years, where we still have coaches who are working that there's no doubt we heard their voice on a tape talking about paying players by a third party to come to their university.
Which would still be illegal.
It would still be illegal, but strangely enough, they're still working.
Right.
So, I mean, there's been a certain level of just, I think, that has led to, I think, a naked cynicism toward college sports. And I feel like, to some degree, that's on good reason. I mean, at some point in time, you just don't believe the system works anymore.
Well, I don't really know how I feel about this. I can see a lot of problems. I'm not totally against it. What I was going to say is you can blame a lot of this on the greed of a lot of the institutions and the coaches.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the problem. That when you're building $50 million workout facilities or a $80 million practice facility,
or you're paying coaches $10 million not even to work because you fired them.
When coaches are making $9, $10, $11 million a year, when defensive coordinators in SEC are making over $1 million, and then you couldn't, the athletes, though they were getting scholarships, and that is something.
It is something.
It is something. But there's all this other cash, and then with the new deal with this playoffs that they're going to have, the cash is going to be rolling in every which way. It does look a little doesn't look right not to allow a player to at least get paid maybe for an appearance fee.
Yeah. Well, and so one of the interesting things to me about the name, image, and likeness thing is that, we saw some deals at 12:01 a.m., but we've also seen people in Olympic sports where the scholarship money is nowhere near what it is, like in basketball and football, that kind of thing. And Olympic sports are struggling in these universities to be funded.
Yeah, I think it's not going to be – everybody thinks it's at one time that the football and your major sports are going to really benefit from it. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think there's going to be a few on the football and basketball team, which could cause all kinds of issues among the team. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I think, especially in women's sports, it's going to be a boom for a lot of the females who are very popular, especially on online and and things of that nature. The pitcher from Alabama, Montana Fouts.
Yes.
How popular she is. The pitcher from James Madison last year that was like a Cinderella story.
Yep.
Some of those kids are
She's one of the ones that got a deal like right away.
They're going to really, really benefit from this right here.
Well, and that leads me to, you were talking about the baseball. I don't know how it's going to affect it. To me, to some degree, it actually liberates some of these players to make a choice to stay in school, or not just stay in school, but be focused on the sport, because now they have a revenue stream that offsets, because those scholarships are really not paying. I mean, they're nothing compared to the full rides and whatnot.
Very few baseball players, even at high-level schools, get a full ride.
Yeah, so, I mean, it really kind of offsets things, and it offsets things in such a way, to me, that takes some of the pressure off of the universities and how they work scholarships, you know, to get extra money to them.
We'll see how this flows out. I don't everybody on the team's not going to be making the same.
No.
And we'll see what issues that's going to cause.
Curiously enough,
could cause some issues. We'll see, but I don't think you're going to see as. I just can't see businesses advertising with people that it doesn't work. They may try this at first, but after a while, you know, if it's not a boom to them, they're also business people. So, you know, I think it's we'll see. I right now it's like the Wild West, and it's a huge change. And I guess what I worry about there's really no overlying management of this right now, and that's that. I do think there's going to be some problems.
I do wonder this. One of the things we talked about with the NCAA is they have an investigative ability, but they don't really. Their punitive ability just does not seem.
Well, they're
to
incompetent.
Work. They're incompetent.
They're good at running tournaments.
Yes,
that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of shouldn't even be in the business of worrying about all this other stuff.
No,
because they just never have done it well.
Eventually, they may. That's where it may go.
Well, and so that's exactly, and so that kind of leads me to the other part of this, which is in so many other sports, other than the major ones that we've discussed in college, especially football and basketball. Well, I guess especially football, basketball is kind of opening up, but there are other avenues for players to athletes to not even worry about going to college unless they just want to, you know. And when you look at international soccer, I mean, they turn professional at 16. They can go and pursue a profession.
They basically can, but you know, it's there's still. We started the segment off about the joy of college World Series.
Yeah,
and if people want to break off and go play in China or Australia and get their money, they can. But I do think there's something tangible that lasts for a long time for the memories that we just watched in the College World Series and so forth. That avenue to go through will always be there.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'm saying too. The people, what I would like to see is a system for those who want to go to college and be a part of that atmosphere can do so, and those who are not interested in that can go do whatever they want to do, and they don't feel that they have to follow that path for a year or 2 years or whatever it is.
Well, other than football, that's pretty much the way it is now. But,
yeah, right? It's just that they've been trying to legislate it differently.
Basketball is just 1 year.
I mean, look.
Baseball, you can go directly to the pros if you're good enough.
Which is also, I think, why I kind of enjoy the softball and the baseball part of it, because the people who are playing...
You got to stay 3 years.
Yeah, well, the people who are playing, that they wanted to do what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you had a choice. Go pro or stay for 3. I like that.
Yeah, I do too, and I guess that's the thing about the basketball. I wish it was more like that.
You're right.
It's just a total. It makes me cynical to think about the fact that a person shows up at Duke in July, and then they're basically gone by March of the next year. They really only had to go to school for 1 semester, but they got a scholarship.
Yep. And
that scholarship could have gone to so many other people.
Some would-be doctor.
Yeah, and so you know, if their objective is to be a pro, let them go be a pro. Right. Don't bother with the college thing. Let somebody else do that.
I agree.
All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, along with the return of high school sports here in the fall, of course, we're going to have a routine college football season.
Everybody's starting at the same time.
Yeah, everybody's
nobody's opting out like the Ivy League.
Yeah, the Ivy League.
The Big Ten, in, out, in.
Yeah, and hopefully nobody just plays 5 games and gets into the
Pac-12.
playoffs.
Yeah, okay.
Or whatever. I mean, hopefully we get to see some things on a football field, and hopefully they are decisive in nature in terms of when we get to the end of the year, we're like, yeah, that was probably the best team in the nation, or at least the 4 best teams in the nation. I mean, we will never agree on that point. I mean, not you and I, but just us generally speaking. But hopefully we get to the end of the year and we feel like we actually have a football season that counted. I mean, I'm not even sure if I feel like last football season even counted in college football, to be honest with you.
It's got to count because of what all the kids went through.
It counts for them.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. It does count for them, and they did have to go through a lot of things that had nothing to do with them.
That's correct.
And I guess on that front, I shouldn't be so negative toward the Ohio State situation, but, it doesn't change how I feel about that.
Right.
The way the football playoffs panned out anyway. But, yeah, so what are some things you're looking forward to?
Well, let's see. I'm looking forward to a 12-team playoffs, though it's probably not going to happen this year.
Yeah. Are they talking about a 2-year or 3-year timetable? I don't remember exactly what that number was.
Well, they're still in the discussions, but it looks like when you have the SEC and Big Ten behind it, it's going to happen.
Yeah, right.
So I think they're working out the dynamics, television, and all that stuff. I would love for it to happen this year, but it doesn't look like it.
It would be hard to. I think it'd be hard to get all of that contractual stuff taken care of for it to happen this year.
And it's worth billions of dollars. Yeah. So a lot of things can happen if it's that much money. But yeah,
that's true.
That's something I'm looking forward to. A real playoffs like they play at every other level.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I'm looking forward to watching the new quarterback at Western.
Yeah.
I assume he will be. They've got 5 on their roster, but I assume the transfer that came in with the offensive coordinator will be the quarterback. I'd like to see what they do with this new offense
and his 2 receivers.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, keeping on Louisville and Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if the new offensive coordinator at Kentucky can transform Kentucky's offense into a more explosive offense. I mean, they've been effective, but boringly effective, with basically no passing game, and he came from the Rams, so let's see what he can do. I don't think they have the quarterback though.
No, I wouldn't say so.
What I have seen so far, and I'm looking to see if Louisville can bounce back. I mean, they were they made more turnovers than McDonald's last year. Offensively just killed them.
Yeah,
and then Coach Satterfield kind of stuck his foot in his mouth a couple of times during the year, flirting with with a new job and everything. So we'll see.
Was that South Carolina he was thinking about going to?
We're going to see if he can get that goodwill back like he had his first year.
Yeah. Going back to the WKU thing, I'm looking forward to seeing how Dalvin Smith bounces back. He looked like he was going to be in good form, and he was having a solid season before he got injured last year. So Glasgow's own Dalvin Smith, I expect in this new offense, he might fit into it very well as a guy who's a wide receiver, bulked up to play tight end, but it still has that speed and athleticism. So I look forward to that. It could work out well for him.
Yeah, me too. I mean, he's a great kid, and he deserves to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his only roadblock in his whole career has been his health. But yeah, he should fit in perfectly to a throwing team.
Yep. And then of course we got Tanner Bowles down at Alabama.
See if he gets his chance.
Yeah, he got some playing time last year in some games. I think he's right there in the depth chart from what I saw in the spring as a potential start at guard. I don't know if it was right or left guard. So maybe his opportunity comes down there in Alabama for him. So I'm looking forward to that, see how that pans out. We have several players from Barron and Glasgow and just the area in general playing at Lindsey Wilson and at Campbellsville, especially at Campbellsville. So let's see how it works out for those guys. I think that'll be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to keep up. Sometimes we kind of lose sight when they go away and things of that nature. But, I think Lindsey Wilson's coming off a national title.
Yep. That's right. And they also, the former Mr. Football from Danville, who might be the fastest guy I've ever seen in high school football, transferred to Lindsey Wilson. Was it Demarie Van Cleve, I think is his name?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember where he was, but yeah, he'll be at Lindsey Wilson and eligible to play if he still has the speed he had in high school.
I'm sure he'll be effective at that level.
Will be.
Yeah,
he will be
on the turf at Lindsey.
I mean, I think he scored every point against Glasgow in that game. I mean, and basically it was like get him the ball and watch him run. Won the state title with that same philosophy. So yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. And then the NFL season. What's fascinating to me about the NFL season is Tom Brady's coming back.
Yep.
And everybody on that Bucs team is coming back.
That's the Brady effect.
It is.
Where he, since he's been in New England, never takes all the money.
Yep.
I mean, he takes plenty, but he doesn't take $40 million. You know, he's not one of those quarterbacks that takes all the money and then complains about not having enough help.
Yeah.
And that sacrifice has enabled wherever he's been, Tampa or New England, to surround him with better than average players, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of people complained about the offense, but those better than average players a lot of times for New England were on the defensive side, and that's how they won, 4 of their Super Bowls basically was through defense.
That's correct.
And, I mean, he made great plays, but, I mean, he didn't do anything. I'm not saying he didn't do anything. In a 10-3 Super Bowl, it wasn't about the offense.
Well, that was the one, yeah.
Yeah. But not just that those guys came back, but it's like everybody was lining up to go play with him in Tampa Bay as well. I mean, it's just fascinating.
One of the greatest leaders of all time, any sport.
Yeah.
No question. Yeah, I mean, he's 43, will turn 44. I mean, amazing. And then you got the Aaron Rodgers saga that's gone on all summer. I tell you what, with Green Bay, the one thing I'm pretty sure of, he will be playing at Green Bay this year.
Yeah.
They're not going to trade him, and I don't think he's going to turn down $35 million sitting out.
No.
They may trade him next year, but you're not going to trade him. You won't trade him unless you know what draft choices you're going to get back. Because if you trade him right now, whatever draft choices you're going to get back from that team will probably not be near as good because he's going to win wherever he goes.
Yeah.
But it's just been I think it's hurt his image, some of the things that's been going on over there with him. So kind of keep an eye on Green Bay. Dallas should be really good, but they kind of think they should be really good. But Dak Prescott being back, they should be dynamic offensively. Then, our local team next door, Tennessee, picked up Julio Jones to go with already a dynamic offense, though they did lose their offensive coordinator, who was really good.
Yeah, that's going to hurt them, and I don't know that they address their offensive line issues. Well, not their defensive line issues, I mean to say, because their pass rush was just terrible last year.
Yeah, they were last in the league. They were last in the league, I think, in sacks.
Yeah, so I mean that was something they needed to figure out.
I don't know. I know they signed some people and they drafted some people. We'll see. Their head coach was a great linebacker in New England.
Yeah,
I'm sure it was irritating to him last year that that side of the ball let them down.
Yeah, and that was the side of the ball that let them down because their offense was fantastic. People can listen to the Titans on 105.3 The Point all season long. We'll have, I'm sure, some preseason stuff going on there. So listen to those guys over there. You can catch Chris Bratcher and the Axe. You can catch Axe over there too. They'll keep you up to date on the Titans. So,
all things Titans.
All things Titans. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I don't know. Are there any teams that you think to yourself might be sleepers this year? Because there always seems to be a team or two that pops up every year.
Well, I mean, sleepers. I think Cincinnati's going to get better. Mm-hmm. They're in a very tough division. Mm-hmm. But I like Burrow.
Yeah, Joe Burrow.
He's back, and they drafted his star receiver at LSU. And they were pretty good last year offensively. If they get up to 8 to 9 wins, that'd be a good year. I wouldn't. So they're not really a sleeper. It's hard to say the Rams will be a sleeper, but they traded for Matthew Stafford. That's a big improvement right there. So probably if I had to just guess a sleep, how about the Vikings?
Yeah, they were a team last year that. They were the almost team last year.
Right.
But they had all the elements, it looked like, to be a contender. And it just didn't quite pan out for them. I kind of like the 49ers as well.
Yeah. They just injuries killed them last year.
Yeah, but I think a lot of times people look at the record. They don't really look at how things went down.
They had the worst amount of injuries of anybody.
Yeah, and they're another team. You mentioned the Titans losing their offensive coordinator. The 49ers, I like their offense, and if
lost their defensive coordinator.
Yeah, that's going to hurt them. Mm-hmm. Yep. But if the quarterback they drafted fits the way it should, I think they made the right choice. We shall see.
We'll see.
So we'll see how that pans out. I wouldn't bank on him right now, but I do think even without that factor in, the injuries, the people they have coming back, they should be a team that will pop back up this
well, they should
year.
be. You're right.
But other than that, I guess I'm just looking forward to some football games played on some sort of routine schedule.
Yeah, and it's it is the probably the national pastime now is NFL.
Yes, I mean it's a year-round obsession.
Football in general anymore.
Yeah, it is. It is. Because
it's our sport. Nobody else in the world plays it. A little bit in Canada. We don't share this with anybody.
Yeah. Everybody else has made up their own rules to play.
That's right.
Ironically enough. But yeah, it is the national pastime at this point in time. I mean, once July 1 hits, it's all football all the time.
Training camp and all that will kick in. That's right.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I actually thought, and we talked about this last year. I actually thought the NFL season last year was so much better than it was expected to be.
It's fantastically run.
Yeah. And I thought
those
they did
guys,
a good job.
they know what they're doing.
Yeah. And they do it in such a way where it's like
the shield is more important than any player.
Exactly.
It is.
Exactly
It
right.
is. The NFL is more important than anybody.
Yeah. It is the old adage of we're glad you're working here, but we've been here a long time and we'll be here a long time after you're gone.
That's correct.
All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we'll wrap this up today talking about the NBA playoffs, NBA title games coming up or being played. The Phoenix Suns, I guess up first let me say I just was wrong because you said to me, well, why can't the Suns win it? And I think I said because I just don't trust Chris Paul to stay healthy. The irony was Chris Paul went into COVID protocols. They won 2 games without him, and as long as he's on the floor offensively, they're pretty close to unstoppable.
Well, they're old school.
Yeah.
I like watching Phoenix play because they remind me of teams 10, 15, 20 years ago. They got a defined point guard who is a point guard.
Yeah.
I mean, he can score, but he is a point guard.
Yeah, and Chris Paul is he's one of the greatest point guards ever.
They have a shooting guard in Booker, who is a shooting guard. Mm-hmm. They have a center, not a power forward. They have an actual center, who can actually post up, and he doesn't shoot any threes. He's an actual center, and then they got these 2 forwards who are wing players, and it's an old school approach. They don't shoot a ton of threes. They shoot threes, but
although they were 20 of 40 in the game. Game 2, I think.
Yeah, but they don't normally shoot that many. But they, at one time the stats will tell you in college and pros you either shoot a 3 or you shoot a layup or a dunk.
Yeah,
Phoenix shoots a ton of 15-footers.
Well, and that's what I was going to say.
Chris Paul and Booker shoot it off the dribble. That 15, 16-footer that I used to love to shoot.
Yeah.
And it still works.
It does. Going back to that 20 or 40, though, that's basically what Milwaukee said. We're going to take away that 15, 20-footer. And Phoenix said, okay, we'll just step out, 5 extra feet and hit these.
So they guard you.
Yeah.
They play hard. I think they're well coached. And but they have defined roles. Mm-hmm. What became popular in the last couple of years is this role-less basketball or whatever, where there's not a you're not a true. There's no more point guards or forwards. I'm just a player. Mm-hmm. Well, come on now. Yeah, there's. I think sometimes having a role in a position can be effective because now you know what's expected of you.
Well, and meanwhile, they're taking on the Bucks, and Giannis Antetokounmpo is a guy who is a role-less player in a lot of ways, but in the most critical moments, he's really a center/power forward when they really need something from him.
Well, he's a great player. Don't get me wrong, but the problem with him and what sometimes, of course, they're in the finals, but makes it a little difficult is that he's their best player, but he's not necessarily the best player in the fourth quarter because he's a terrible free throw shooter.
Doesn't shoot the three very well.
And he can only score basically by sticking his head down and going to the basket or posting up. So most players that make big plays at the end are players who can shoot it off the dribble or things like that, or guards. And the problem is people go, well, just post him up. Well, they'll foul him.
Yeah.
And so he's not the most reliable at the end of the game. And so they have to turn to Chris Middleton, who's a really good player too, but he's very inconsistent.
Yeah, he's pretty sketchy.
And the point guard has been inconsistent too, Holloway. But they're still, they're a fantastic defensive team, and I like Milwaukee too because they don't have. What I like about Milwaukee and Phoenix, save a little bit for Paul, is there's not a lot of egos.
Yeah,
you don't see a lot of mouthing to officials. They all play hard. And I like that because there's way too much mouthing in the NBA and that looks like both teams have a lot of good guys on that team.
Well, and we talked about this right before we took our hiatus about Chris Paul. Is like I feel like Chris Paul's misunderstood in a lot of ways. He's just such a hyper competitive individual.
He does, but he flops a lot.
That was that time hanging out with James Harden.
He's a big time flopper, and he does complain a lot. But he is a really good player.
Yeah,
a really, really, really good guard.
He strikes me as the emotion gets the better of him sometimes.
Sometimes it does.
I don't think he's as calculated as say if you watch James Harden and the whole game is about that. He's doing all the other stuff, and sometimes the emotion is the part that probably overrules him. But if the Suns hold on and win the series, I'll be really happy for him because going all the way back to his Charlotte days, I think they knocked off the Spurs one year when the Spurs were like the 2 and they were the 7, and he basically just ate the Spurs up. And like immediately, I was so impressed with his game because he could just do everything, and that was like his third year in the league.
Yeah, I think he's 35, maybe 36.
Yeah,
and he's doesn't play like it.
No, and if you look at his history, every team he's been on is better with him on it.
Oh, no question.
Immediately.
Well, that's a great point guard does that for any team, just like a quarterback in football.
Yeah, I mean, and we're talking not like they're 5 games better, they're like 20, 25 games
because
better.
He's not a score-first point guard.
Yeah. So I'm happy for Chris Paul, even though he can be irritating to watch sometimes. I'm happy for Devin Booker. He's the son of Melvin Booker, who played on the Elite 8 team at Missouri in 1994 or 95, I think it was. And that kind of stuff. It's a Mississippi thing. He's from Moss Point.
Okay, well, people around here see him as a UK guy.
Exactly. The 6th man on UK, and they wonder why he didn't start. That's basically how they see Devin Booker. But I'm happy for him. Cam Payne, who was at Murray State.
Yep.
He was the big guy at Murray State before Ja Morant came around. A lot of people had forgotten about him. He's had a great playoff, so happy for that guy too. A lot of good stories, I think, in this NBA playoffs. By the time it's all said and done.
In the finals.
In the finals, yes.
Yes.
We won't worry about the rest of it because
it's been forever.
The team that you desperately did not want to win it, they got knocked out. So that's good. And we didn't have to hear about LeBron James all year.
That's exactly
that's good
right.
Too. We get to talk about Chris Paul and Giannis not being able to hit free throws.
Yeah, I mean it. I like the players on both teams. I like how they play.
Yep, I do too. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.